Okay, how to wax your chain. I've seen a few different things on YouTube, and some of them are good and some of them are just dead wrong. So this is the way I was shown how to do it, and I do it this way every time, and they come out beautiful. So first thing you do is there's a brand new chain in here. You put your chain in, you put the petrol in, and you just give it a shake and a slosh. Okay, and leave it. Come back in 15 minutes or so, give it another shake and a slosh. Another 15 minutes, come back, give it a slosh and a shake, and then replace the petrol with fresh stuff and do it again. So that's your first thing you do. Your brand new chain, or even a dirty chain, does exactly the same treatment. You keep washing it in petrol until the petrol's clean. Then you move on to degreasing oil. Same deal. Put the degreasing oil in there. Give it a slosh every 15 minutes or so. And then when the degreasing oil is nice and clean, then you hit the chain with methylated spirits. Slosh it around. And when the methylated spirits is clean as it came out of the bottle, you know your chain's completely, absolutely and thoroughly done. Then we move on to waxing. So right now I'm doing the chain in petrol. And I'll leave that for a bit, and then I'll change it to clean petrol and do it again. And give it a shake. So I just put some new petrol in here and do the whole process again. Okay, so I've just changed the petrol to fresh petrol for this is the second dose. Give it a shake. Don't need to be gentle, give it to it. Get the petrol in there. Leave it, come back in 15 minutes. Do it 2 or 3 times. I've got all day to get this done. You probably do it in half a day, the whole waxing and petroling and degreasing and methoing, but I take my time. That's it for 15 minutes. Now just leave it alone. Come back in 15, do it again. Give it a shake. 3rd or 4th time, petrol's still off colour. Tip it out, do it again. Okay, this is soak number 2. The petrol looks pretty damn good, but I'm going to give it one more just for good measure. Adverts on TV, come out and give it a shake. Okay, this is the 3rd time I'm going to soak it in petrol, but this time I've taken the chain out. I'm going to turn the chain over so we can soak back the other way. And the quick link in there as well. Okay. Next dose of petrol. Just make sure the chain is fully covered. On goes the lid. And the same deal, shake it again. You don't have to be gentle, really give it a good hard shake. Okay, now leave that 15 minutes or so, come back, do another 2 or 3 times, and then time for the degreasing oil. So that's soak number 3, and it's looking pretty damn good in the petrol now. So now I'm going to tip this out, hang the chain up to drip dry, and then hit it with a degreaser. So that's the next trick. It is now 1:45 o'clock, and I started at 10 o'clock. So don't be in a hurry, just take your time and give it a good soak and a good shake. Okay, so that's the chain hanging up, drip drying after the last petrol. So let that drip dry for a little bit, tip the petrol out and set up for degreasing. That's the next shot. Chain's all nice and shiny, lovely. Okay, time for the degreaser. Exactly the same deal as before. Yeah. Just enough to cover the chain is all you need. And degreasing oil and shake. Okay, so we've had the petrol, we finished with that. And now the first degreasing oil. Give it a really good shake. Don't be gentle. Let it sit and soak now, come back in 15, do the same thing again. Okay, adverts on TV. Rather be out here shaking this and watching the ads, I can tell you. Okay, just like that. No need to be gentle. Okay, I've just cleaned everything up. We've had 2 doses of degreasing oil and I've just washed the chain under the tap and I've cleaned everything up ready for the methylated spirits over there. I've hung the chain up and I've wiped it down with a rag. My next trick is to put the chain in the cleaning box and add methylated spirits and do exactly the same again. Right we are. The methylated spirits is now in the box. Chain's in the box. So we give it a really good shake. No need to be gentle. Okay, so we just leave it in the methylated spirits, come back in 15 minutes, give it another good shake, come back in 15, give it another one, come back in 15, give it another shake. And if the methylated spirits is as clean as it came out of the bottle, you're done cleaning the chain. And I'll just leave it in the methylated spirits all night. I won't bother to take it out till tomorrow morning before I start waxing the chain. Okay, things you'll need to wax your chain. You're going to need a crock pot or a slow heat cooker. Find the cheapest one you can get. You're not going to use it for cooking afterwards. You will need a bag of PTF E-powder, 1.6 microns. It must be 1.6 microns, very, very fine powder. You will need a heat gun or a thermometer to keep a check on the heat of the wax. You don't want it any hotter than 90 to 95 degrees Celsius. You will need a piece of something. I've got a piece of tile trim to stir the wax and the chain in the wax, and something to lift the chain out of the wax to hang it up to dry afterwards. So what I have is an old CB aerial with a bend on the end of it just to hook the chain and lift it out of the hot wax. But an old Y coat hanger, if Mum's not looking, going pinch one of hers, bend it up to do the job, and that's all you need to wax your chain, and a bit of time. Just take your time. So right now my wax is quietly melting. That might take an hour to finally get it fully liquefied. Then when it's fully liquefied, stir the bejesus out of it. Be careful you don't slop any of this wax on yourself. It burns, trust me. So stir it thoroughly, but stir it carefully, and then lower your chain in. Don't just throw it in, lower it in, because this wax is like melted plastic if you get it on you. So be really careful while working with the hot wax. Okay, so as we go along I'll explain more how I do things. But for the moment I've got to wait about an hour for this wax to melt to fully liquefy. Okay, it is now 10:15 a.m. in the morning and the wax is probably halfway there for being completely melted. So we've still got to wait a little while longer yet until it's completely melted. Then we stir the wax to mix up the PTFE powder into the wax, because the PTFE powder separates from the wax. That's why we've got to keep stirring the wax every now and then to get the PTFE floating in the wax, so then it can get into the chain links and into the chain. It's now 4 minutes past 11. The wax is almost completely melted, and then I'll give another half hour or so, and then we'll get on with the waxing. Okay, it is now 11:30. The wax is completely melted, and I don't know if the camera will show it, but you've got clear liquid wax on top, and on the bottom you've got the PTFE powder. So what you got to do is give it a good stir to get the PTFE powder floating all through the wax, so it's not laying on the bottom. Okay, and as you stir it, the wax turns white. That's the PTFE powder floating now all through the wax, which is what you need just before you put the chain in. So I'll stir this up, then I'll get the chain ready to put in the wax, and I'll come back to you. Okay, I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up or not, but all the wax is melted, and you've got the clear wax on top, and the white you can see is the PTF powder, or sunk to the bottom. So what you do, you give the wax a good stir so all the PTF powder is now floating in the wax. It's not just all laying on the bottom. And when you've got it all nicely stirred up, in goes the chain. Okay. So just lower him in, or this is the way I do it. Some people hang it on on wire and put it in all at once, but I just feed it in like that. Okay, and in she goes. And as you see, it's all coated in wax. And when you pull it out of the wax, it dries pretty fast. This will do. Once you've got the chain in the wax, you just give it a shuffle every now and then. Keep the PTF powder floating. You don't want the PTF powder to sink to the bottom and stay there. You want it floating in the solution. And every 5 to 10 minutes you just wander out and give it a stir. Check the temperature of the wax. .94, which is good. Don't forget to put your master link in as well. I do anyway. Put the lid on. Now I've turned it to automatic. I hope it stays about 94, 95 degrees. Now we've got to stir a little bit more often because we want to keep the PTF powder floating in the solution. How long do you leave it in for? I'll give it an hour, and keep stirring it. Come out every 5-10 minutes, give it a stir, keep the PTF powder floating in the wax, because that way it gets into the chain. As the wax gets into the chain, into the bearings and the links, so does the PTF powder. That's why it has to be that 1.6 microns, very, very fine powder. We just give it a stir every now and then, and let the wax and the PTF do the job. Now it's 11:47, and most of that time was waiting for the wax to melt. Okay. Been about 5-10 minutes or so, time for another stir. Let's have a look at the temperature. 94, that's lovely. Now let's give it a stir again. I'm not just stirring the wax, I'm dragging the chain around while I'm stirring here. That way it helps sluice it all through. A little later, ooh, that was hot. A little later on we'll try and turn the chain over without scalding ourselves. So you can sort of get in from the other side perhaps. I don't think you need to turn the chain over because it'll be pretty much fill filled with wax as it is. Wax on the PTFE powder. The PTFE powder is like a super lubricant. The wax is a lubricant by itself, but the PTFE powder ups the lubrication of the wax manyfold. Okay, you can see how it's all changed colour to all white again. And 94, 96, put the lid back on. Walk away for 5 or 10 minutes and give it another stir. Okay, ducked inside to make a cup of tea. 96, that'll do. Give the pot another stir. All the PTF powder floating again. Put the lid back on. Easy as that. Okay. Been about half an hour or so. What I tried to do earlier was to roll the chain over the other way up, and I wasn't all that successful. So what I do now is just give it a good shuffle and a shake. Pick the chain up, swirl it round, roll it over best you can. All this will help to get the PTFE powder into the cogs. I did a better job of this earlier than I'm doing now. There we go. Give it a good sloosh. Make sure the whole chain is all under the wax. There we go. 95, beautiful. I just had lunch, so I've been away from it for about half an hour. And as you can see, the PTF powder has pretty much sunk to the bottom, and you see a bit of the chain here and there. So we're going to stir him up again, and straight away all the powder's mixed in with the wax, and it won't be long and I'll be taking it out of the wax and hanging it up to dry, set and cool down. Put the lid back on. When we do the next step, this takes a bit more time because you've got to let the wax cool down by itself, but you can't let it cool down too much because the wax will glue to the chain. If you have big globs of wax all over it, it doesn't matter, it's just hell of a mess to clean off. But if you take it out too hot, any wax and PTFE powder in between all the links will run off and run out of the links, even just a little bit. You don't want any of it running out. So what you do is you leave it in the wax until it just starts to get a skim on top. As soon as you see that skim happening, you pull your chain out, because about 5 minutes later you're going to have wax all over your chain in big glugs. So if you leave it too long and you pick your chain up and you go, put it back in, heat the wax up again, let it cool down to around about 50 degrees Celsius, I think it is. But you'll see the skim just starting to happen on top of the wax. Pull the chain out. It's easy as that. Okay, I've got a plastic sheet on the floor ready for the next episode of hanging the chain up to dry, because it does get a bit drippy and you can get wax on your floor. So I just put a plastic sheet down, and whatever drips on the floor drips on the plastic sheet, and that's fine. Righto, I'm ready to set myself up to hang the chain up to do the final go round of the chain. So first thing I do is I've got to turn the wax off, unplug it from the wall, pick up the whole wax pot and all without burning myself, And very carefully position this. Oh, shit, that was hot. Righto, now the trick now, you've got to keep an eye on the wax and watch it. If it starts to get a skim coating on the top, like the wax is starting to dry, pull the chain out then. But don't pull it out before that. Give it a stir every now and then, even though it's cooling. Okay, so now sitting on the floor, and while it's cooling down, just give it a stir every now and then. Keep the PTFE floating. Make sure the chain is under the wax. Keep an eye on the temperature. 89.6. So we're still right for a while. When it gets to about 55, it's getting really close to starting to skim over. That's when you've got to be ready to rip the chain out. Okay. Been about a quarter hour so far. I'll give it another stir. The more you stir it, the faster it cools down as well. You keep dissipating the heat. But it's still a slow burn to get it down to temperature. And keep stirring it every now and then. Keeps the powder floating, which is what we want. And the temperature now is 85, so it's gone down 10 degrees in about 15 minutes. Just give it a stir. Keep checking the temperature from time to time. But watch for the skim. You'll see about 50 degrees, thereabouts, 50-55 degrees, you'll see a skim start to form on top of the wax. That's when you take the chain out. 10 past 1 o'clock. I've been stirring this on and off pretty constantly because I can. I've got nothing else better to do for the time being. And the temperature is now 78 degrees. 78, 77, so it's still coming down. That's good. When it gets to about 55, you want to watch it, because it'll get that skim start to happen pretty quickly. And if you leave the chain in that little bit too long, it'll start to clag all over your chain. Isn't a problem, it's just a bigger mess to clean up. 73. Okay, it's 1:30. Let's see what the temperature is. Okay, 63. It's cooling down. So you need to keep a close eye on it now, because anywhere from here to 50, you'll see it start to skim over. As you can see, it's still liquidy. So there's no great panic yet. Okay, let's give it another 15 minutes and see how we're going. I'll keep stirring it in between. Just starting to skim, so out she comes. At 57 degrees it started to skim, so I had to whip it out in a hurry and hang it up. So I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, at 57 degrees the wax started to skim over, so I had to whip the chain out in a hurry and get it hung up. And there she is, just dumped up there, all twisted. That doesn't matter, I'll leave it there to hang for a few minutes and then I'll straighten it all out. Don't know if the camera, you'll be able to see it on the camera. Already it's clumping. See that? Oops. Got a slight skim on it, had a slight skim on it. So you got to get at it pretty quick. Otherwise your chain ends up looking like that. Okay, don't worry about the mess. I spilt it when I was picking it off the floor. Let's have a look at it. 55, 56 degrees now, Celsius. And as you can see, it very quickly goes all scummy. You've got to get the chain out well before that. So I pulled the chain out about 58 degrees and just beat the scumming happening. So you've got to get on it pretty quick. If you lifted the chain out of the wax now, you would wind up with clumpy gunk all over it. Like, doesn't matter, just makes it harder to wipe all the excess wax off. because you got it out too late, but won't harm the chain anyway whatsoever. Just gives you a little bit more of a mess to clean up, that's all. So if you watch really careful, you can get the chain out of the wax without it being all covered in clumpy wax. As this is the best one I've ever done. Usually I've got more of a mess than this. So this is pretty damn good. In a minute I'll wipe it down with the rag from top to bottom. And if there's any chunks of wax between the chain grooves in here, just poke it out with a screwdriver. Put it back on the bike, on the trike, and go for a ride. Any other excess stuff will just peel off on the run. Easy as that. Okay, cleaned up the mess. Now while the chain is hanging up there, I'm going to run down the sides of it with the rag. Just to scrape off any little lumps and bumps that are there. We're not trying to get the wax off the outside of the chain, we want that to stay there. But we do want to just scrape off some of the little lumps and bumps. So we just grab the chain like that and just run our hands down, perhaps one side at a time. Okay, just like that. See bits of flakes falling off it, like that. And now we'll go down the other side. Just like that. And that's good enough. Now, when you look through the links of the chain, sometimes you'll see wax stuck in between the links. Just get a small screwdriver and just poke them out. And then once you've done that, the chain's ready to go back on the trike. So what you witness is the way I do it. I'm never in a hurry. It's taken me nearly 2 days, but you can do a chain in half a day. Just put your chain, your wipe, if you say just come from a race out the bush and you mud all over your bike, just scrape all the top layer of mud and grease off your chain. Start with petrol, wash and wash and wash and wash. New petrol, wash, shake and wash. New petrol till the petrol's clean. Then into the degreaser, shake and wash until there's no more dirt coming out of the chain and the degreaser's still clean as when you started. Rinse the chain under the tap to get the degreaser out, clean out your container. Put it back in the container, put the methylated spirits on there, shake and wash and rinse. And when the methylated spirits is as clean as when they came out the bottle, you're ready for waxing. And then over to your wax pot. Melt your wax, get it to 90-95 degrees, put your chain in, stir, and the PTFE powder, most important. Mix it up so it's all white in the wax. Put your chain in, stir it every 15 minutes or so. I don't know, 3/4 of an hour I suppose. I just do it all day, I don't care, but about an hour should do you. Turn your wax off, let it start to cool down, and as soon as you see the first bit of skimming, chain out, hang it up. Leave it for about 5-10 minutes to cool down, run down with the rag, poke any wax out between the links, put your chain back on and away you go. It's as easy as that.